Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining this PAM webinar. My name is Ganesh, and I've been with ManageEngine for the last 15 years. I lead the support and pre-sales team for ManageEngine's PAM suite of products. So let's start out with the session. In today's webinar, we're going to take a look at the PAM evolution in the last 12 to 14 months, especially after this post-pandemic situation. We're going to see how the PAM requirements have evolved and see what are the current challenges that have opened up due to the post-COVID situation. We're also going to look at some of the effective security approaches that you can take to tackle some of these challenges pertaining to managing privileged access. We'll see a few real-world use cases that are typically common for any IT enterprise and see how having a PAM solution will help you in those real-world scenarios. We'll also talk a little bit about how some of these PAM concepts expand beyond the core PAM capabilities and also the role of AI and machine learning in today's privileged access security. So to begin with, just a few numbers to give you a bit of a perspective of how the current situation is. 68% of organizations feel vulnerable to insider threats. 63% of enterprises feel the biggest security risk being their privileged IT users and administrators having full-on admin rights. 78% of organizations feel that they don't have an effective management of user privileges and elevations in place. And 59% of organizations feel that a lot of their users have elevated access for a longer period of time that they feel are pretty unnecessary. So with that said, if you look at the challenges that most enterprises face these days, the first point would be the borderless networks on the rise. Especially after the pandemic situation, we have pretty much majority of the enterprises switching to work from home model. So their regular internal users are currently working from home. Some users work while traveling, and majority of them use their own devices under BYOD model. So the traditional in-depth strategies that you would typically have in place for your internal IT securities are no longer effective. And the rise of a lot of SaaS solutions and cloud applications also open up and require a stricter IAM controls for cloud users and identities. And you also need a behavior-driven mechanism or a technique in place to not only assess and monitor your privileged access, but also for anomaly detection and threat management. So how can we tackle these challenges? There are two core concepts that are quite popular these days. The first one being the zero trust secure access principle, and the second one is the principles of least privilege. Now, these two points are more of a concept rather than a feature or a set of features to be precise. So in that sense, the zero trust and the least privilege principles can be applied across IT infrastructure on various areas. So to understand it better and to see how it plays into a PAM's perspective, let's look at what is a zero trust. So a zero trust is a situation where you basically don't trust any privileged access, regardless of whether it is a user, an internal user, or an external user, or a machine entity or an application that requires access or access to a data. You basically don't trust it. You always have a setup where you validate every privileged access. And for achieving this in a PAM's perspective, you will actually need a combination of factors to be read. So for instance, you need to see which user is requesting a privileged access, from which network they are trying to connect, which device they are using currently requesting for a privileged access, what type of an application or endpoint they are trying to connect to, and what is the overall purpose of this particular privileged access. So all of these data points has to be validated, and based on the validation, you either provide access or deny access. So you should have a mechanism in place that can handle all of these data points and factors takes them into consideration before providing any privileged access. And the next point of least principles, it's fairly straightforward. By default, you have your users and administrators having just enough privileges. So you should not have too many users registered as domain admins or network admins or DBAs with sysadmin rights. Instead, you still provide them with a way to operate as a domain admin or a network admin or a database administrator without actually having them registered as a full-on domain admin. So for that, you need a mechanism in place which can provide them with elevated permissions just as and when it's required. So you need a mechanism where any of your internal or external users should be able to put a request, provide a valid justification as to why they need elevated permissions to a particular endpoint or to an application or a database, and get it reviewed before they can actually gain that elevated rights. So that said, these two concepts go even beyond PAM. There are situations where you will need the same concepts applied on your ITOM area or Active Directory management area, or even in endpoint management areas. But from a PAM's perspective, the zero trust concept is pretty basic in the sense you need to have a PAM solution that actually provides the capability of having users access the servers and devices they need on a day-to-day basis without having full-on admin rights. And also, you need the system to be able to handle both user requests for privilege elevation and also non-user entities like machines or scripts or config files or CI/CD pipelines or even applications trying to talk to another application or a database will need privileged credentials to be able to communicate with other endpoints. So you will need a PAM solution that can assist in validating privileged requests and also granting privileged access for both the users and also non-human entities. And if you take any IT infrastructure, you can break it into 5 resources. So first would be users, and you will definitely have devices like servers, workstations, etc. You obviously have a network to which these devices are connected to. And then you have applications running. These could be mission critical applications running on dedicated servers, or there could be multiple applications coexisting in a single server. And then you have the actual data. So these data could be something that are generated inside applications, or these could be critical data residing outside the applications, just as files and certificates or other digital information stored in the servers. But the bottom line is, out of these 5 resources, any point tries to access to another point, you are going to consider it as a privileged access. So for instance, a user needs access to a server, or an application needs access to a database, or a user is trying to connect to a demilitarized zone. So all of these factors, all of these access is considered to be privileged access, and you need to be able to handle these access using the 2 concepts that we just talked about. So let's look at it in a real world perspective. Let's see some use cases on how a typical requirement would be and how we can tackle those challenges using the concept that we just discussed. So the first example, let's say you have an external technician who needs access to your corporate network. He needs to access to a particular privileged asset in order to troubleshoot a problem. So this is a common requirement any help desk technician would have. Any help desk team will have this requirement popping up every single day. So typically, these help desk technicians would be working from office. Perhaps their laptop is connected to the network, and they are accustomed to just launching remote connections or connecting to the machines, and it's fine. But with current situation, I'm guessing most of these technicians are working from home. They're trying to connect to internal corporate network. You need to have something more than just having network accessibility. So the fact that they are trying to connect over the WAN is one, but beyond that, what kind of controls do you have in place? A VPN would be a starting point where you allow users to be able to establish a connection to a network. But then once they're inside the network, how do you vet what kind of requests they are trying to get in and what kind of operations they're trying to perform? So what would be a typical solution for this? So you will need a PAM solution that actually gives way for your external technician to be able to use the PAM as a gateway. So the technician will just log into PAM. In some cases, you will authenticate them through multi-factor authentication, allow them to submit a request. So someone wants to go to a Windows server or to a SQL database or to a firewall, then you basically allow them to submit a request inside the PAM solution and then have the approval mechanism in place to automatically elevate the user with a more powerful capability for a limited time frame. So a better example for this would be a Windows server. A user needs access to the Windows server, but by default they are not a local administrator, but they need access to that server, perhaps to install some software. um, so they will probably need local admin rights, I guess, only for like 15 minutes or 20 minutes. So it's not a good idea to share out passwords with them or create local accounts for them. That would be even more terrible. So what you can do is use a PAM solution that has a mechanism where this user can log in, ask for an elevated privilege, and then either their own account or a configured account will be elevated into a local security group or into an Active Directory group so that they get more privileges. Now, these groups can be something as common as a local admin group, or you can even create a fine-grained security group that has even more control. So, for example, you could literally allow somebody to log into a server, go to control panel, but cannot uninstall anything. Similarly, you can allow certain users to be able to connect with root privileges to a Linux machine, but never run the rm-rf command because that command can be restricted from being used by this particular user, even though they have gained root level privileges. So that kind of system would be required, and dual approvals, auto approvals, extension of grace periods. These are all nice to have features to limit the overheads. Like obviously you cannot have an administrator sitting all day long approving requests. So an auto approval will come in handy for such requirements. When the devices are critical, and especially if it belongs to multiple teams. Say, for example, you have a Windows server running a very critical SQL instance. Now, this device will be considered to be owned by both Windows team and the database team. So if someone wants to log into this server as a local administrator or with a highly privileged access, that needs to be approved by both the teams. So in such requirements, dual approvals will come in handy where you can have better controls in place. And let's look at the next challenge. So now in this example, you actually have DevOps teams or application teams. They have automation scripts or CI/CD pipelines. And in order for performing their automated tasks, these pipelines and automation scripts require privileged credentials. Now, typically, these credentials are provided to the DevOps teams, and they kind of hard code it in their automation scripts. And it poses two concerns. First, you actually have the credentials hard coded in clear text. If someone were to get even read access to that particular host, they would be able to see the passwords in clear text. And the second challenge is how are you going to ensure that these passwords are changed frequently? Like let's say it's a service account and the password is stored inside your Jenkins or Chef or a Puppet automation script. Every time you change this password in Active Directory, your DevOps team have to remember to go to all the places and update the passwords. Otherwise, your automation scripts and pipelines are going to break down. So how do you solve this problem? First, you're going to eliminate all the hard-coded passwords across all the config files, scripts, connectors, and all the places. Anywhere, if you have a password hard-coded, that's a big no. So you can remove them, and then you set up an API-driven credential brokering model. And by that, what I mean is you have a API call configured in exchange for the actual password. So when your automation script runs, it is going to programmatically talk to your PAM solution, authenticate against PAM, and retrieve the exact password that it is authorized to use. So with this design, you don't have passwords hard coded anywhere. And as and when the password is needed for these pipelines and automation scripts, they are designed to just retrieve it out of the system in a more auditable fashion and also in a more secured fashion. So in addition to that, if your PAM solution has a SDK, that would open up boundaries to have contextual integrations of PAM with IGA systems or other applications like CRM systems or SAP solutions. So that way, you will have an even tighter integration, and you will be able to solve even more complex scenarios and have complex workflow setup for automation. Now, that said, I'm going to just share my screen to show you guys how ManageEngine's own PAM handles both these requirements. So let's start with the first requirement of just-in-time elevation. So we have an external user who probably needs access to a server with elevated rights on a temporary basis. So I've just logged into my PAM instance as an admin, and I'm going to configure this Windows 10 machine. I'm going to delegate access to one of my end users. And I'm choosing certain users as approving authorities. Now, these are the team leads or department heads, you could say, for that particular device. So in my case, it's a Windows team. So one of these admins have to approve the request, and only then the technician will gain access to that particular server with elevated rights. And the other functionalities like auto approval, grace period, and all of these are there. And like I said, these are all, it'll come in handy on in certain scenarios. Like for instance, the same technician needs access over the weekend. You don't have anybody working in office or working at that time to be able to review and approve requests. So in such a situation, you could set up auto approvals and say, if any request comes from 9 a.m. to 12 noon, go ahead and approve it on this Saturday. Or you could even go for ITSM based integration. Let's say you're using ManageEngine Service Desk Plus or Jira or any other ITSM solution. Then you basically grant privilege elevation by validating the ticket ID. So all the approvals and the communication happens within your ITSM. And once the ticket is approved, your technician just needs a ticket ID. So the user will be prompted for the ticket ID, and with that, they will be able to get privilege elevation. And then we talk about what is the actual privilege elevation. So if you see here, all the local security groups I have in that Windows 10 machine are populated for me. So I could choose any one group and say, when an approval is given, I want this user to be elevated into administrators group. Or I can even have some fine-grained group like power users, or I created a custom group called SQL Server users, and that provides them with fine-grained permissions, like they could only use Microsoft tools, Microsoft SQL Studio, Microsoft Configuration Manager, but nothing else. So you could create such groups, and at the end of the day, you will have that group associated and activated for this feature. So now let's look at how it works in real time. So I'm going to log out and log in as the end user. And as you can see, for the end user, the tool looks very straightforward. This user have been given access to two machines. First one is a Linux machine with a test account. Obviously, the user does not have permission to look at the password, but the user can just launch an SSH session, connect to that machine and do their job. And obviously, everything they do is going to get recorded. And let's come back to our Windows 10 example. So you can see that this user has a request button. So the user will say, this is the reason I need privilege elevation. And I'm going to need this elevation, let's say, from 4 to 5 p.m., for example. So the user is asking for 1 hour of privilege elevated access for that Windows 10 machine. And now the request has been sent to the approving authorities. One of them can review the request and approve it. We also have iPhone and Android apps, which the users and admins can use for both requesting approval and also for the admins to approve the request. So they could do it on the go using the phone apps. But the bottom line is the user is guest and they're asking access to the Windows 10 machine with this account with highly privileged, elevated privileges for this reason from 4 to 5 p.m. So as an admin, I can approve the request and grant them the elevated permission or reject the request. Or in fact, I can modify the time and say like, okay, so you want to install something. I don't think you need 1 hour to install it. So I'm going to reduce the time and say, you will get elevated rights for just 30 minutes. So that kind of control allows you to not only validate privileged access, but also make sure by default, no one has full on admin rights. When someone needs an admin rights to any machine or an endpoint, they have a way to put a request, get it approved, and then gain access through a proper channel. And the next point that we talked about was about non-user entities. Say, for example, you have, let's start with the simple example of PowerShell script. And you have some PowerShell scripts that is running every day. And the PowerShell script's job is to go from point A to point B and push a file, transfer a file, basically. Now, in order for this to be done, the PowerShell script needs the password of the point B. Only then it can log into point B and then transfer the file. So with a PAM solution, especially if the PAM solution has API capabilities, in ManageEngine's case, we have this RESTful API. We have about 60 operations that you could perform all in a programmatic fashion, but the most common one would be the password retrieval. So in your PowerShell script, instead of the password, you will have an API call, something like this. And if you look at it, the API call is basically an HTTPS GET request. It also sends a unique authentication token registered for that particular PowerShell script for that particular host machine. And it has all the other details and the reason and everything. So PAM, when the PowerShell script runs in real time, will authenticate this request. There's layers of authentication, like there's obviously auth token, but before that, there is a host name check. There is a PKI-based authentication to validate the certificate that is being sent with the request. And then at the end of the day, this PowerShell script will only have access to maybe one password, which is of that point B password. So to put it simple, your PowerShell script will no longer have passwords hard-coded. But with this kind of a setup, your PowerShell script will literally fetch the password in real time and run without storing it anywhere or caching it anywhere. So this kind of a setup will help you in eliminating passwords hard-coded in any areas. PowerShell is a simple example, but let's just say you have Jenkins or Chef or Puppet or any of these DevOps tools. Then we have a dedicated plugins using which you will, again, be able to broker credentials to your automation scripts. So you no longer have to hard code credentials in it. So these are some of the functionalities that we have in terms of how you can handle those two challenges. Now, let's look at certain areas that goes beyond PAM. So we talked about how you can provide elevated access for a configured user for a configured amount of time. But what if you want to control elevation within an application? Say, for example, you want someone to log in and use SQL Studio, and that can be achieved by PAM solutions. But you want that SQL Studio to run as a DB owner and not as a sysadmin or any other elevation that is available in that particular application. So for such a requirement, we have another solution called Application Control Plus. So it goes beyond PAM. It doesn't just handle privileged requests, privileged access, and privileged elevation. It goes beyond that, where it actually discovers all applications installed in your servers or endpoints. It effectively categorizes them and then allows you to restrict or block certain apps from being used by certain users, and also provides just enough elevations for those applications. Like in this example, SQL Studio basically runs as a local user, but for 10 minutes, you can allow somebody to run it with an elevated privilege. So they could maybe access a database or run some select queries in it and so on. So if you want even fine-grained controls, there is ways to achieve it. PAM by itself will work in an agentless mode, but for even fine-grained controls such as application level control, you will probably need an agent to be deployed in your endpoints. So that's it. Let's look at how you can protect your environments from internal threats and also external threats. So there's a good bit of deep learning, machine learning technologies play in this area. An ideal PAM solution should be able to communicate with other IT security solutions like SIM solutions, for example. So you should be able to share PAM audit data with any SIM solution that you are using. And for even more contextual integration, it's good to have two-way integration where, for instance, PAM can not only know what is happening inside PAM, but it also understands what is happening outside PAM. So just to give you an example, someone logged into PAM, they are a privileged user even in PAM. So because of that, they already have access, let's say, to a firewall password. So they checked out the firewall password and then they decided to bypass PAM. Now, generally, users will launch remote connections from the PAM solution so that it gets recorded. But because this user is already a high level user, an administrative user in PAM, they were able to just check out the password, bypass PAM, and directly go to the firewall. And they make some change. Now, regular PAM solutions will not have visibility of this because it's outside the PAM scope, because they went out of PAM by just checking the password. The best PAM solutions can do is send out an alert saying, look at it, somebody took the firewall password, but that's about it. But PAM doesn't concern with what did they do in the firewall. So in such situations, if you have an integration with your SIM solution, that will come in handy. In ManageEngine's case, we have a tighter integration with ManageEngine's own UEBA solution. So in the same example, if somebody checks out a password, goes to the firewall, makes some change, PAM will know about it because of the fact that we exchange data with the SIM solution, which will obviously be gathering event logs from that firewall. It will correlate and it will provide you with advanced event correlation and the complete story of everything that happened. So you can easily identify things that are happening even outside the boundary or scope of PAM. And then to detect anomalies, we have a deep learning machine learning engine named Zia. And the way it works is basically it crunches all the data points of PAM. So for example, in PAM, you have information like who logged in, at what date and time they logged in, to which machine they try to connect, or what password they retrieved, all the raw audits. So this deep learning engine basically crunches this data and starts assessing the risk valuation for each activity. So in due course of usage, so maybe for like in a month or two, as your users start using our PAM solution, it will give you more powerful insights and also provide you with anomaly detection. So for example, your users work from 9 to 5. That's the typical business hours during which they log into PAM, connect to other machines, or gain privileged access and do their day-to-day operations. But on a Saturday, you see someone logging into PAM and trying to connect to a critical server. Now, normally, PAM solutions will just audit it. And if you have any pre-configured notifications, it will send out. But in PAM's case, in this example, without any pre-configuration, our PAM solution will understand that this is a risky behavior. So it will send out an alert saying, this particular operation has gone beyond the risk threshold. So it doesn't look right. Someone is logging in at the middle of the night and trying to get to a critical firewall. So it would be a good idea for administrators to take a look at it. So that level of insights can be achieved and gained using a machine learning engine, such as the one that we have in ManageEngine's PAM solution. And then identifying privileged accounts and their vulnerabilities. So a good example is, let's say you have a DBA working in your organization, and during their work tenure, they created local accounts called Ganesh in various SQL databases. And then they left the organization. Now, your typical monitoring solution would not be of much help. Your SIM solution would not be of much help. Majority of the solutions that you probably are using will not help you identifying that an account called Ganesh is sitting in a SQL database because this event happened years ago. but it still sits there. And if anybody has access to the database and somehow can gain access to your network, your enterprise is in a lot of trouble. So with our PAM solution, you could also identify such dormant accounts and privileged accounts that are sitting in various endpoints. It could be a Windows server or a database or a network device or firewall. But the bottom line is you have to consolidate and gain visibility of all privileged accounts sitting in your infrastructure, even if they are service accounts. Most often, and administrators struggle to identify why a service account is even there in Active Directory. They know it's there. They don't know who created it. They don't know what would happen if they delete it. That's a quite common situation that we face often. And with a PAM solution, you can identify that. You can scan your network and find out where this particular service account is being used so that you will finally get a list of service accounts that are absolutely not used anywhere within your infrastructure, be it in services console or in scheduled tasks or even running IaaS apples. So it would be safe for you to say, perhaps change the password, and then when nothing happens, you can safely delete that service account, knowing that it is of no use and it's just sitting there, posting a security concern and challenge for our security auditors. And then you will get insights with our advanced analytics module of how frequently certain devices are being accessed, certain passwords are being accessed, certain type of operations are being performed in your infrastructure. This will give you insights not only on the password and users activity, but also on assigning resources. So for example, you know that a server is being bombarded with access requests every day. You have hundreds of people logging in and logging out of that server to do hundreds of operations. And you can see that as a nice little chart, a dashboard in PAM through our analytics module. And then you will be able to make meaningful actions. Maybe you will increase the specs for that box or make it easier for the users to be able to get to that box or do that operation without even getting to that box. So all kinds of insights can be achieved using our advanced analytics modules. So with that, we can switch to a Q&A session. And if you guys have any questions, you can just type the questions in the left pane. We also have some poll questions that we will open up, and you guys can just answer the poll. That will give us an idea of your current situation, and perhaps we can suggest you with a best product or a best module of PAM. And that being said, I'm just going to go ahead and read some of the questions and help in answering the questions. So someone has asked, is the session recorded? Yes, this session is recorded and we'll be sharing the recording of it. Do you have any method where any users can see the password and others cannot? Yes. In our PAM solution, you can allow certain users to be able to see certain passwords and mask certain passwords. And you also have the control of this, not just at the user level, but also at a user group level. So let's say you have 4 users. You don't want these 4 people to be able to see passwords. You just put them in a group. And just for this particular group, you can hide the password. So these people cannot see passwords. They will only gain remote access only. They cannot see passwords, but they can connect to the machines and do their job. And someone has asked a question about differences between 2 products that we have in our PAM suite called PMP, which is Password Manager Pro, and then PAM360. So Password Manager Pro is something we started building 15 years ago. It was, well, it started as a simple password vault for enterprise teams. We needed a solution like that, and we built it. And over the years, we built a lot of capabilities focusing on account management. Account management basically refers to the ability to discover accounts and change passwords and control access to it. And that would fall under account management category. But that's pretty much all Password Manager Pro focuses on. But PAM360 is our unified suite. So it touches on account management, key management, where you can rotate SSH keys and change TLS certificates and manage their life cycle of it. And also session management module, along with all the advanced integrations, like integrations with ITSM or SIM solution or RPA solutions, like Automation Anywhere is a pretty good example. A lot of enterprises are using Automation Anywhere. So we have a bot which can broker credentials to your other bots that are doing complex operations within your infrastructure. So PAM360 is our unified suite. If you are a small or a medium business looking to start your PAM journey, then Password Manager Pro perhaps would be a good start for you. But if you already are a medium to large sized business looking for all of these advanced integrations, and then PAM360 would be the right solution for you. And we also have a smooth upgrade path for you. So today you could start with Password Manager, and maybe after a year, if you want, you can upgrade to PAM360 as well. And the other question is, does PAM also offers UEBA, or is it a separate offering? That's a good question. The UEBA capabilities are actually available in our unified SIM solution called Logs 360. So it is a separate offering. And the same goes for advanced analytics. We have a dedicated product called Analytics Plus. So the way ManageEngine works is we build point products focusing on a core area. So if we were to build deep learning or machine learning engine into PAM360, it would be an overkill. So the best way to go about it is to have dedicated solution focused on their dedicated platform and operation. So whether you purchase PAM or not, your enterprise will one day need a BI solution, a business intelligence solution. And the right way to go about it is use this business intelligence solution with any PAM solution that you are going to use, whether it's ManageEngine or any other PAM solution, it doesn't matter. But the idea is make sure you provide way for products to gain expertise in their own territory. If we were to build business intelligence directly inside PAM, we could do only so much. But if we can leverage an existing BI solution, its capabilities and its deep learning engine, we would be able to go much further and much deeper into the territory of business intelligence. So in that sense, we have Analytics Plus, which is our BI solution. But the good thing is you could evaluate it, and we have a trial version of all of these products, and you can see it in real time how they tightly integrate between each other and provide you with these advanced analytics and anomaly detection capabilities. The other question is the solution. Do we have to take up the whole thing, or can we choose modules? So like I said, yep, we have 4 products. One is called Password Manager, which is our account management solution, which would be a good solution to start with for pretty much all enterprises. And then we have Key Manager, which focuses only on SSH keys and SSL certificate management. And then we have Access Manager. Now, these are point products you could choose, or you could just go for PAM360, which is a unified solution. All these 3 products are bundled together, and it comes as a single installer binary with its own single database and web server and all of it. So you could just go for PAM360 if you know that in future you're going to need these features. And also from a pricing perspective, we don't charge per user or per device. So that will help a lot of enterprises because of the fact that the number of devices and number of users pretty much change every day. It's not a good idea to license a product based on that number. And also it will be very cost efficient for the fact that you're only paying for administrative type users who will be setting up this PAM. You're not paying for end users. You can have thousands of people logging into PAM, checking out passwords, gaining privileged access, connecting to remote machines. But it's all practically unlimited in the sense how much ever the box can handle, the specifications can scale. You can have as many number of users as you want, but only for the administrative users. You can think of them like team leads. You only pay for those team leads who will be setting up this PAM solution and allowing the other users to use it. The next question is, what value can you add for your existing customers, free health checks or implementation reviews? So we'll be happy to set up quick sessions. If you are an existing customer, we'll be happy to set up a quick web meeting session with you, do some health check your infrastructure, and suggest you on architectural changes. So we'll see how you have your Password Manager Pro or PAM360 deployed, and we can recommend you on how best you can expand it. And we can also go through best practices. We have a big document. It's about 60 pages best practices document. We'll review them and see how much of best practices is being practiced in your implementation, and we'll recommend you in enabling those capabilities. And the next question is this product also available as a cloud-based solution? Um, no, this is a on-premise software solution, but it is also listed in Azure and AWS marketplaces. So especially in the last 1 year, we have many customers using this over the WAN by just deploying it in a cloud server. But by design, it's an on-premise software solution. A lot of our customers, especially in the last 1 year, they use this as a replacement for their VPN. So people sitting at home will just type pam.companyname.com. They get to the PAM login page. They log in either using a SAML authentication or a two-factor or multi-factor authentication, and then they are able to jump to internal devices in a more secured fashion. So that way, you're not opening up your entire infrastructure, but still, you're also not restricting your users from using these internal devices. Um, the next question is, do you offer any certification? Yes, we do have a certification courses available. We'll be happy to share that information with you guys through email. And then, is it possible to issue a copy of the questions posted through this webinar? So the good thing is this entire session is getting recorded, so you will be able to listen to the questions being read by me and the answers responded by me. So we will be sending the entire recording after the session. Is there any MFA available with the product? That's the next question. Nope. There is an MFA available with the product, but it's a very rudimentary option. It's like a OTP. So every time somebody tries to log in, PAM will generate an OTP and send it via email, and people have to supply that OTP to log in. It works, but I would recommend you to have a proper MFA solution in place. Like there are a lot of free MFA systems, like Microsoft Authenticator is a good option. You can install it, and then you can just scan the barcode, and your users can use the MFA token from Microsoft Authenticator. There's Google Authenticator, and any radius compliant system can be used rather than using the built-in MFA system of our PAM solution. It depends on the size. If you only have a few users and if you have a very good email system, you know for a fact that nobody is going to lose their email access, then it's okay to use. But yeah, having a proper MFA solution integrated would be a good option. How is this different from AD Manager? So AD Manager deals with Active Directory. It helps you in managing Active Directory by creating groups, security policies, and all of it. PAM goes beyond Active Directory. So it helps you in managing everything, including your switches, routers, firewalls, load balancers, databases like MySQL, MS SQL, Sybase, or Oracle. And how do you grant access to these endpoints? How do you grant access to these databases? How do you change the passwords of these databases built-in accounts like SA account, root account, manager accounts, and all of it? So you can think of PAM360 as a full-on privileged identity and access management for the IT infrastructure as a whole. In fact, we even touch a little bit on ITS, and we have plans on expanding to IoT territory pretty soon. So that's what PAM360 is about. AD Manager, AD Audit Plus, or the suite that we have called AD360, they predominantly focus on all things Active Directory. Okay, so PAM can replace VPN and has application management, but can PAM replace RDP servers? Yes, PAM can replace RDP servers because PAM in itself is a RDP gateway. So if somebody logs into PAM and they push a button and they connect to a machine. Now, in this scenario, the real session is not actually initiated from the user's own laptop. It's actually initiated from the PAM server, and it goes to the target machine. And what the user is seeing is just a tunnel vision of it. So in other words, if your user's laptop is infected by a malware, it's definitely not going to get into your network because the user's laptop doesn't even have direct connectivity to your internal infrastructure, to your internal assets at all. And we even have jump server or landing server capabilities where, let's say you have data center resources, definitely no one will be able to go to that data center resources directly. So we have a setup where PAM will do multiple hops and finally take this user to the jump server area. Um, so we will be happy to set up personalized demos for you guys and demonstrate how people can launch RDP, Open SSH, or launch VNC sessions, or even connect to SQL databases via CLI, all from this PAM web interface without having to launch any third-party apps or other third-party systems. Can it host the application, or does one have to load the application on local machine and then give it permission? Yeah, so it cannot host application. PAM by itself is an application. It just acts as a gateway. So everything else remains the same. So if you have applications, it has to be hosted internally, or even if it is a cloud application, it has to be there. And we just act as a medium, as a gateway to grant access to users with more controls and recording and auditing and sometimes even session shadowing capabilities, where you could literally see what an external vendor or a contractor is doing on one of your critical servers to which you have granted access to them. Can we generate temporary passwords for specific resources to share with outside? Yes, you can generate temporary passwords. We call it as OTP, where these passwords come with a validity of like 1 hour or 30 minutes or whatever time frame you want. And the passwords will be valid only for that time frame, after which it will be changed. Can PAM also manage the passwords for web applications like HRMS, CRM? Nope. As of now, PAM cannot reset the passwords of all web applications. We do support select few cloud applications like Azure, AWS, Salesforce, Rackspace, and all of it. But a full-on web application password management engine is being built by our dev guys. We're going to support HTTPS gateway capability and website password reset capability probably by the end of this year. We're still playing around with the design, and pretty soon we will have those capabilities. Can we upload credentials in bulk? Yes, you can upload credentials in bulk. We have a way for you to migrate from any existing tool that you might be using, or even if you just have all passwords in a spreadsheet, you can import it using our import via CSV or CSV option. If you guys are using KeePass, then we even have an option to directly import a KeePass database file. And how is your product licensed is something I answered earlier. It's licensed by admins. And by admins, we refer to team leads. So if you have like 5 teams or 5 departments, it's a good idea to purchase 2 or 3 admins for each team or each department. The end users are unlimited and the number of devices managed are unlimited. What value can you add for your existing customers? So yeah, this is something I answered earlier. Yeah, we'll be happy to do a free health checkup for you. We'll have a quick WebEx session and see how you have the tool configured and recommend you with the best practices. Can we integrate with Azure AD? Yes, we have direct integration with Azure AD. So you can use, or you can allow your users to even log into PAM using their Azure AD credentials. And we support SAML 2.0 as well. So you can set up Azure AD with MFA, which will make it even more convenient. Does it support Linux operating systems for deployment? Yes. We have PAM available in both flavors, Windows and Linux flavors. So you could download it and deploy it in a Linux machine if required. The PAM also provides an identity repository like AD. No, as of now, PAM doesn't provide identity repository, I would say, but PAM has a dedicated section called connections, where you could potentially have all your web applications, websites, and their identities stored. So in that sense, it acts as a form filling product, where if you go to the website, it will automatically submit the credentials and log you into the website, regardless of what website it is. And that capability is available in PAM. Can you showcase temporary password generation in PAM360? So I'll be happy to do it, but we will keep in touch with you. We'll get in touch with you to set up a quick session, a more personalized session, where we'll show you how you can configure this temporary password feature. And it will work across any device, be it Windows, Linux, switch, router, firewall. But the concept is simple. Passwords is going to be shared in clear text with someone, but with a limited validity for like 30 minutes or for 1 hour. What is the retention of the recordings? So that's a good question. So all the sessions that we record, especially the SSH and SQL sessions, are more like text. So they hardly grow in kilobytes or megabyte size. It never even reaches gigabytes unless you've been using it for 1 or 2 years. And with regards to RDP recordings, it takes about 1 megabyte of disk space for 1 minute of recording. So it's highly compressed. It doesn't record idle time and all of it. So 1 hour of recording is only about 60 megabytes or less. So with that, you can calculate how much disk space you will need. You'll probably need about 200 or 300 gigs of disk space, and that is sufficient for you to keep using PAM even for a long run. And we also have session management capabilities and audit purge capabilities. So you can set up like 3 years worth of recordings, and anything older than that will be purged automatically. And you also get to choose where you want these recordings to be stored. They are encoded, so it is secure to store it anywhere you like. And generally, these recordings can only be played inside PAM. If you want to play it outside PAM, then we have a special player that we will share with you, and you can use it. The next question is, can we record all connections? Yes, you can record all connections, RDP, SSH, VNC, SQL connections of all users going to all privileged endpoints can be recorded safely. And what level of security does the software offer? So we use dual layers of encryption. So all the data that you store will be encrypted at the application layer, and then it will go for an additional layer of encryption before it gets stored inside your database. By default, we bundle PostgreSQL database, and you get these features even in the default installation. But if required, you could also use your own Microsoft SQL database, set up your own master key, symmetric key, and all of it. We have key rotation capabilities. We even support HSM integration, like you can hook your PAM key into hardware security modules like SafeNet and manage it from there. On all communication channels or through encrypted channel, the web interface works only through HTTPS over TLS 1.2 or 1.3. So in terms of security, we have a dedicated document. You could just go to our website, or we'll be happy to share the security specification document along with this session recording. If we need more than SSH RDP connections, could it be available to add a new connection, like a single sign-on of a storage? Yes, you can do that. In addition to RDP, SSH, and VNC connections, web connections, you can add it as a single sign-on for websites or web applications. If it's for a storage, we even support bidirectional file transfer feature. It's something like a SFTP feature where if you want to do file transfers, you could just do it from UI. Like you can drag and drop and push files and pull files and all of it from PAM's UI with full auditing. But if you want any other interface, we do have a way for you to like launch other executables. And the next question is, during the transition, is the traffic encrypted? Yes, all traffics are encrypted. You can choose your own TLS certificate, either it's internally signed or externally signed from a third-party CA. You can apply it and use the TLS encryption for all forms of traffic. Can we also restrict DB access and query execution via PAM? Yes, you can, but this feature is still under development for SQL. So I would say it'll be available within the next few months. We're planning to roll out this command control feature for SQL, where you can define what type of queries can be executed and what type of queries are restricted from being executed. Currently, it's not available. So the only option for you to handle this is based on the account you could define. Like you could define an account with which the user can log in, and when they log in, delete queries won't work. They can only do select queries and read operations. So that is something you can control through the account rather than PAM filtering the commands as of now. Would this allow privilege management on Mac OS? For Mac OS, we do support password rotation. We can automatically change passwords, but we don't have a full-on privilege management similar to Windows or Linux. But if you still want to handle the privileges of Mac, the best option for you is to just use the built-in account capabilities, where you create let's say you have two accounts called admin and guest, and you delegate guest account with a user. And when they launch a connection to Mac, they can only do read-only job. But if you grant or elevate admin privileges, they could do admin level operations. So in other words, you can do privilege management of Mac, but not directly through something like a group policy or an operating system level policy for Mac, but just by the account that you're going to configure. And the next question is, if we need more than SSH, yeah, this is something we discussed. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry for quickly reading the questions and quickly replying to it, but like I said, yeah, we'll have the recording of it. So in case if you were not able to catch a question or understand what I responded to, feel free to just play the video and just look at it. Or even better, you can just drop us an email with the same question. We'll be happy to answer the questions for you in a more elaborated fashion. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining the session, and thank you so much for your time in listening to me and going through this webinar. Like I said, if you have any more questions, if you have any particular use cases, if your enterprise is facing certain challenges, regardless of what territory it is, be it PAM or any other area, feel free to reach out to us. We have more than 60 plus point products in ManageEngine's portfolio. We'll be happy to answer your questions, and we'll be happy to help you in tackling these challenges and make sure your enterprise is completely secure and users are able to perform their best in a much more convenient and as well as in a secure fashion. So once again, thank you so much for your time, guys. We will send you the recording and the other useful information through email, and hopefully we'll meet again for our next session.